There is a self-driving vehicle owned by a local businessman. It hits and kills a person at Chandni Chowk, Rawalpindi. Who will be behind the bars now?
Saad, you've touched on a very raw nerve right off the bat, and I congratulate you for doing so.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome to fresh new episode of SybridCast. This is Saad Mir. Imagine a world where AI not only assists but completely redefines the way businesses work. Imagine a world where billions of people each day interact with non-humans more than they do with their own kind. Imagine a world where global tech companies are redefining their policies so that they can extract maximum capital out of public data. Imagine a world where AI is being used in warfare. It's not only assisting the countries, but it's providing or it's proving to be a competitive edge in a war between two countries. Now, I ask you a question. Does this world fascinate you or horrify you? Whatever it may be, this is the world we are living in. Each day, the lawmakers face a new ethical or legal dilemma. And what the future holds, even the father of AI don't know. So, in today's episode, we'll navigate through the new rules of this new world. And we have our esteemed guest with us, Mr. Usman Piracha, who is managing partner of Pirachas, an international legal firm. And he's not just any lawyer. He has shaped global policy, from leading negotiations at OIC to speaking at World Investment Forum. He has done a lot of work in AI law as well. So he'll be helping us navigate through this new world and all the problems and issues we face today. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam, Saad. Thank you for having me.
Sir, very, very warm welcome to SybridCast. It's good to see you here, and we hope we'll discuss very fruitful things that can certainly help our listeners today.
I look forward.
So, let's start with a hypothetical question. There is a car owned by a local businessman, and it's rented to Food Panda for food delivery. The car is manufactured by Tesla. The car is self-driving vehicle. It hits and kills a person at Chandni Chowk, Rawalpindi. Who will be behind the bars now?
Saad, you've touched on a very raw nerve right off the bat, and I congratulate you for doing so, because there is really the concern that permeates not simply at a individual level, but also with regards to how entities, larger entities, will need to take responsibility for all the solutions that AI is churning out, and self-driving cars has been one. Here is where we will have to dig in. So, for example, if this car was being driven as anybody else would, and it was not in violation of any traffic laws, and it was following the rules and procedure as anyone would, and an accident occurs, which results in, say, for example, a fatality, then we will have to see if the individual who, say, became victim of this accident, if the individual per se was at fault for any reason. As horrible as it sounds for the person who is now deceased, the question would be, if the driving car was driving properly, then you would treat it as any other car that was being driven by a law-abiding citizen who is following the rules and regulations of traffic, right? However, and I suspect this is where you would want the answers for.
There is glitch in the matrix.
where the problems can happen, is where the car makes a decision which most would consider as incoherent or incorrect or flawed or unexpected from what your responsible driver would do in a circumstance. So, for example, if in this hypothetical, the individual per se was someone who was crossing the road, and they were crossing the road at, say, a zebra crossing. The expectation would be that the cars would slow down or let the person cross. Let's presume here the AI, for any reason, thought the person, because the person was wearing clothes that matched the zebra crossing, they thought there was nobody walking on the zebra crossing, and they kept going. And they crashed into the person who was just about right in the middle of the road. Now the company that made that car is in a lot of trouble. And this is where things can get concerning. Because let's open that Pandora box, since you dive straight into the depth of the problem. We are trying to regulate a technological revolution that we do not know where it ends or plays out, or the final product of this revolution.
True.
And all the milestones that we will achieve through this journey is uncharted terrain, right? How can anyone who has no experience of where we're headed know how to regulate this extraordinary power when we don't even know what it is, right? I could regulate something, say for example, if I was a surgeon and I had conducted surgeries over a long period of time, I could chalk out some structure of what would be a minimal expectation of any new surgeon who walks into this field. But here I am, tweaking with a power that is beyond conception. And we don't know where it ends. And I presume that I can understand every outcome that there may be, and so I can regulate this entire extraordinary source of positivity, but as well as chaos and destruction, relying on the capabilities that I have had in the past. But I don't know how this plays out in the future. My understanding of AI, anyone's understanding of AI, we as humans have no clear idea where this takes us now, right? So the Pandora's box is, are we willing to let a system get in a position to make decisions for us where the fatality would be human lives, say for example in an extreme case, or otherwise everything that we call human civilization. That could be the fatality, right? The system itself was not designed to continue driving as soon as someone would step on a zebra crossing. It was designed to stop there, right? Yeah. But the outcome of someone who was wearing clothes that matched the zebra crossing was something that the AI system was not able to differentiate with, right? And one could argue we can improve that system. So fair enough. We make a mistake and we improve it.
Sure.
Sounds like a good idea?
Sure.
What if the mistake is so consequential that the price is so high that by the time we learn from that mistake, the damage has been done? So the question is, if our approach is that we will learn from our mistakes and we will keep building this technology, the probability that we will know the gravity of that mistake is relying again on the past experiences that we have, which are insufficient to know for sure the magnitude of the mistakes that could incur. And if we are not in a position to gauge the kind of mistakes that the system could make, then we can't be in a position to decide that we will be the ones to learn from those mistakes, and those mistakes are worth the risk.
I totally gather that. For that, we would need industry experts in lawmaking process. But here we are in Pakistan, where we are still stuck in colonial era laws, and you know that better than me. We have a police act that dates back to 1870s, I believe. How can I expect that the country like ours can come up with a law that looks into the eyes of future, you know? what would be be required fundamentally to change so that we can, legislate for the future?
If I can speak from the experience that I've had.
Across continents.
Thank you. I have been given this privilege of assisting these organizations, such as, say, for example, the UN, the 57 member state OIC. And so I'm not making an accusation of a particular organization or group of countries per se. I think not just in Pakistan, globally, the way that the regulatory regime works is that we are more reactive by instinct. We don't genuinely regulate on things until there is a need to. So, for example, in social media, we have now just been starting to wake up to the problems with social media. And then now we're thinking about regulating it. And it's 10 years plus since we could have learned from these mistakes, so to speak. But those mistakes were something that we were conveniently setting aside. And now finally we've woken up. So the problem would simply not just be for a country per se, but we as a global village, how do we plan to contend with the challenge here? And you have a very, very valid concern, which is, are we even ready to take on this challenge? If I, with your permission, may add another layer of complexity here.
Sure.
Let's say we are ready for that challenge, but the stakes are so high that in good conscience, I cannot expect you to take your hands off this technology because your competitor is continuing to build on it. So if there is a competition, and I am expecting you, Saad, please, let's not carry on building this technology because I'm not sure where this ends, how this takes us in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And you step back, and your competitor down the street has the luxury of nobody telling him, maybe they don't know or maybe they don't want to know. But regardless, they're building something. And they will build it. And eventually, they will have a solution where you could have had one as well. So, even if you have the best, most aware, diligent regulators in every corner of the world, the element of competition is always going to be there. And this level of competition between nation states is something unprecedented. So, what can we do about that?
So, legislation or over-regulation stops innovation? Are we arguing that?
Yes. Yes, we are. And you've, again, been able to understand the human psyche when you came to that conclusion to say, how do we change this competitive nature of human? That one has to win this battle. And if it takes for regulations to be set aside, then we might as well want to do that. Because let's just be honest. You and I, we would rather want to win this battle than to lose it and have anybody else win it.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Especially we are in the fourth industrial revolution.
Exactly.
And we want to be the leader,
Exactly.
And what you have just said is exemplified through the DeepSeek versus ChatGPT battle. We all know that ChatGPT also feeds on public data, no matter what they say. On the other hand, what they have done, because DeepSeek is a new competitor, will not be using it in the public domain or in the government offices. So, there was a famous dialogue of a famous film that at what cost? So, if we are to innovate, there must be some debate going globally that at what cost? And there must be some ethical guidelines, some legal framework. So I would like you to talk us through different legal frameworks, different ethical considerations that been happening around the globe.
Yes. So I will take the liberty to make this a baseline that the need to outcompete one another is a underlining manifestation of our existence as humans. And I will be very naive to say that I could eliminate that possibility with whatever regulation I introduce. If I am realistic, I should be absolutely aware that whatever solution I give has to be practical. Because otherwise there's no point of doing all that work if it hasn't got any weight attached to it. So we grant our own spirit of endurance and exploration and conquering new frontiers the right recognition that even in AI we will act as we have, which has pushed the frontiers of our existence for ever so long since we have been on this planet. Starting from when humans were not even an agricultural society and were hunters and gatherers to our present time, not discounting all the sea voyages and all the land that we have trekked during the Ice Age and so long and so forth to get to where we are. And we will continue on that journey. The only thing I will say at this point is when regulators are going to come forward with a solution, say for example the ones that are predominantly in the camp which say, slow this down, that is not going to help, right? So I'm going to eliminate possibilities as I come to my answer. So we slow the development of AI until the regulation can catch up. Right?
It's never going to happen, I would say.
It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. So you want to watch it in normal speed or do you want to watch it in slow motion? That's the option. Slowing down the progress or the development of AI so that regulators can catch up is not going to happen. Because the regulators work at their pace, and even if there was a magic solution to make the regulators less reactive and more proactive, I can still assure you that we still don't know what we are grappling with AI. It's like the example that I gave of the surgeon who has the experience of the last 30 years to provide a regulation framework. Based on that framework, they can set guidelines for new surgeons who are stepping into this field. And they're saying, let's not hire anybody else until I have used the experience of my 30 years to set guidelines, and then we can hire the new surgeons. We don't have the past experience to say, let's not do anything about AI, let me build some regulations, and then we will start building the technology, because we don't know where this technology is going to take us. Harkening back to what I said in the start. So slowing down is not the option. Competition is going to be there. There is no question that competition is going to go out the window. We are being realistic. And we're seeing that already. The only thing that we can learn from our past, the one lesson that we can learn from our past and that we can use here, is the kind of lesson that we have adopted in warfare. There is a framework of what war should consist of, keeping in mind the chaos and the destruction that it causes, without doubt, but reining in on that capacity of humans to destroy by creating a framework of what would be considered, say for example, excessive, even in war. So the rules of engagement in war determine how countries are to conduct themselves in conflict. Weapons have been growing ever so often. Our arsenals are getting more sophisticated, more destructive, but what we put together, say for example, the basic charter of what is human rights, the basic understanding of what is considered reasonable and measured response. All of that is the overwhelming architecture that conducts our behavior even in a situation as extraordinarily difficult and dramatic as war. So what we need right now is a similar framework for AI that says what areas, what space, what domain is off hands. This is where we will not go. Because if we go there, then the destruction that we can cause to ourselves has no bounds. So we don't rein in on the technology. We build on the capacity of the technology. We let that capacity take its shape and form in the manner that we are as individuals and nations, and we want to explore and we want to build and we want to do better things. But even with whatever weapons that we can have, there has to be some area that is a no-go area.
Sure.
So this region is where we are not going to get involved. We simply leave out spaces that this is a space where we will not get our hands dirty. So for example, the use of chemical weapons, the use of biological weapons is a clear no-go area.
Sure.
Right?
It's agreed by United Nations
Exactly.
members. Yes.
Right. It's a red line. You just cannot go there. There is no argument. Full stop. So anyone who does do that is now in violation, clearly. We will have to isolate spaces in our landscape where AI should not be allowed to make inroads. Everything else, AI should let loose.
So one of the area which we are now quite aware of is Gen AI deepfakes. And it tarnished the reputation of the person. And it's hard to believe whatever is present on the internet.
Yeah.
Has there been any effort to restrict the misuse of Gen AI?
If I would say that we have laws already in place that could cater for such breach of privacy and damages that could be caused not just in terms of monetary but also emotional, psychological. Those laws that we have are unfortunately always needing to be tested in the courts. So any law that you make will not suddenly turn the tide. In most common law jurisdictions, the courts will have to try it out and make the law work and see how it plays out in real world scenarios. With deepfakes, President Macron, he gave his speech at the AI summit, I think this was maybe a week ago, and he started his speech with his own deepfakes. And he said, this is what's been going around about me. And
So
here
there
I
is a
am.
context to it.
Yes, he made quite the extraordinary statement by saying, this can happen to me,
This
surely
one.
can happen to anybody else.
Sure.
So I absolutely agree that deepfakes is a very controversial area. We can further break it down and say what tools help with creating such deepfakes, who can access those tools. If those tools are not for the public, not for the public consumption, use, then at least we've taken it out of the hands of the majority of people who could abuse it. Then we have application of deepfakes. Let's say there is a Hollywood actor who is filming a movie and has now died during the filming of the movie. Fast and Furious 5, was it?
It's been a long time without you, my friend.
Yes, there we are.
Sure.
So now, in a circumstance like that, where there's a Hollywood blockbuster where the lead actor has sadly passed away, that technology could play a very positive role in helping complete that project. So we will have to limit the use of that technology and find only those areas where it could be applied. And that is a good, healthy starting point. And then, of course, the laws, as they are tested out in the courts, can further refine the entire process.
I think the whole system, the legal system, need to be, come up with a better trial system as well. Let's move it forward. Let's talk about content creators now and the concerns they have. I thought of something, and then I went to use a tool. I gave some prompts, and it came up with a product, with a design, and I used that design. What kind of concerns or what kind of risk I'm unaware of, that if I'll use that design for my client's work to present it to the world, what kind of legal problems I can face?
And this is a problem for many those budding entrepreneurs who are relying on these AI tools. There is an actual problem that OpenAI is in right now, and that is with the New York Times.
Tell us about that.
So the thing is, long story short, OpenAI used public data, right? Some publishers are not impressed by that. And they're saying that the data that you used was not to be consumed for the activity that OpenAI eventually did. So these publishers, these large publishers, they have decided to take OpenAI to court.
Okay.
And essentially what that means is, if OpenAI loses this case, then anyone who is using those tools to generate certain output, where a certain output was also assisted by the data that was sourced from these publishers, then we have a problem. Because the publishers will say, you have used our data through a platform without our consent.
Sure.
Right? But what can we do about it? I mean, we can't just sit and wait and see how this battle unfolds. My first suggestion would be, try and pick tools that allow you the assurance that A, their data, and not just that they say and you believe it, but not only is their data sourced from ethical means, but that they can also back up their claim by saying that if you use our product in the best way and in the right way as it was expected, then we will take up any of your legal cases or any of your intellectual property theft accusations head on, so long as you use our product in the right way. So some companies out there are starting to do that.
Like?
Microsoft.
Copilot. Microsoft Copilot.
I believe it would be Copilot, but I know Microsoft, the commercial users of Microsoft Azure, because that is where it will all be hosted. And I would believe any of the facilitation that they provide to their commercial users. You see, Copilot would be not exactly commercial in all cases.
Sure.
A lot of people would be using Copilot without having that commercial agreement. So it has to be a commercial user of AI products of Microsoft. And then if they end up in one of those circumstances, Microsoft can make the claim for them and protect them from any of the legal damages, so to speak. But there's a lot that you could also do on your own. So for example, if you and I, if we are using a certain tool, I don't know what you're working on, neither do I. as in neither do you know what I am working on. And we both start to prompt these systems, and we start to get to a certain output which is exactly the same as for both of us. Then we've basically walked into each other's intellectual property domain without even knowing, right? So you and I, we both prompted the system, and the system gave us responses.
Sure.
And now we're dueling it out with why this is my intellectual property and not yours. So what I would suggest is, anytime you create anything using AI tools, try and bring your creativity, your originality into it. If you're simply prompting the system and the system is responding to you, that output could be the exact output that somebody else sitting miles away may just end up prompting to get the output also.
Because the data behind that system is same, and the prompt you are giving is the same.
Exactly.
So technically, you both should end up with the same product.
Exactly. And this is why it is essential that we recognize that AI cannot replace all humans.
All humans.
See, I did use the word all very cautiously.
Classify your statement.
But there will be the need for the creative people. The creative people, the ones that bring an innovation to the table, they will have their own space. Because anytime I use a system and I add my creativity to it, and then that system responds and I am building on that creativity, and then I add more creativity to it, I am making that a version of what I want it to be, only infused with the inputs, very unique inputs that I gave them. And that is why it is going to be difficult for anybody to challenge the output that I have and claim that it is not their intellectual property, or that it is their intellectual property and not mine. I'll come to the qualifying statement in just a bit. One more tip that coders can do is, and it's only a matter of time, OpenAI as a tool is going to start writing code which will beat the best coders, programmers anywhere in the globe. And it has already started to do that. The code it is starting to churn out is amongst the best 0.01%, right? If you are going to use that code, make sure where is it in the lines of code that you are adding your own input. Mark it, leave comments. All the coders out there, they know what we are talking about. The computer science grads, leave those comments so that later these were the bits that I coded and I wrote myself. So whatever those lines of codes are, you're not lost at some point years down the line that, oh wait, I can't remember what it is in these lines of code that I wrote myself. So document all of those creative inputs that you gave for the output. It's not just about you giving those creative inputs, it's also about you documenting it. Because then there is where you will be able to prove that it is your creative output, right? So documentation along with your creativity will hopefully pull you through if you're using the right tools, and if you have signed enough documents. Say, for example, if you're selling some solution, an AI-powered solution that wrote that lines of code in which you added your own lines of code, and I have sold it to someone who is going to use that application, then I can write things in my agreement which will say who owns this output and who owns the liability of using this output.
Very well advised. Very well advised. I think you have given very, very valuable advice for free of cost. Okay.
Thank you.
Just one part of the question that I initially mentioned. Are we, in this era of social media, are we getting socially dumb? Because there is a lot of communication that's happening between two profiles that is generated by AI. There is no soul behind those words. There is no creativity behind those communications. And there are no feelings. Just to mention that there is a tool, AI tool for LinkedIn as well. So when you connect with someone, it says, okay, I'm writing a message for you. But there is no communication, the feelings, and that, let's take it forward. These tools are being used by our students as well. I was in a conference in the morning and there were educators and they said, ask this question from Mr. Usman Piracha, what should we do? You give an exercise and the students use GPTs to solve those exercises, and then they come up, and I put forward a question as well to the educators as well. You also use GPT to assess that assignment. So where is that learning part? Where is that innovation? I strongly believe that innovation is a result of creativity. And I, for now, haven't found any tool that is more creative than the human. Do you agree with that?
So I've been teaching as well. There was a time, at least in the recent past, where I was teaching some extraordinarily bright students. And to the educators, I can say this. What role you play is something that AI can never really substitute. If you are a force of creating a positive energy, motivation, confidence building, and trust. When a student needs to learn something, it's not just the materials that they are absorbing out of a book. They are learning from you, the individual. They want to see you as someone who manifests the good qualities and virtues of what can inculcate in the society and what the student would like to inculcate in their personality. If the student is facing risks and difficulties, and for any reason, if there is a student who is facing challenges because of certain circumstances that they're having to endure, and they're not able to perform so well in their exams, and they come in to tell you about it, here is where you have to step in and prove yourself that this is why teachers are necessary. Because a teacher in this situation will say, yes, I teach law. Yes, I can tell you a few things about different jurisdictions and how things can play out there. But I'm also here to tell you that you are a bright student and you can take on this, and I am behind you. And you will do it, and you will do well, and you will make us proud. So go in there, don't drop this course, prove to me and to you that this challenge is something that you can surmount. And when you say it to them, and they hear from you, not an AI, not a bot, not some text written on a screen, that is where you leave all AI tools miles behind in the dust. Okay, so teachers, you can have a very important role. AI will make things easy for you. You are indispensable if you can rise to the challenge. Right? Now, coming to the other thing about using Chat GPT and using OpenAI and using all those tools. Again, it's something that is going to happen. We cannot expect, in good conscience, that students will not use these tools just because we in class said you're not to use these tools. And if I say, again, I'll be as realistic as I can be. I'll say, oh, I have softwares that can run and that can tell me if this is an original piece of writing. Fair enough. Do all universities have that? It's a privilege to use such software. Many universities will not have it. So I have to change the way I test students. I have to adapt to the way that I will now evaluate my students and their performance. If I was evaluating them on a written assignment, I will ask for this written assignment to be presented in class as well.
Great.
And now I can hear them speak with what they've written down.
So now you know that it's their work or it's...
Exactly.
And even if they have used tools to do their work, it's all about presenting your work with the confidence and with the expertise.
Exactly. If they have been able to use those tools to build something, and you put it so eloquently, that they are able to present themselves using whatever tools they can, I would want to encourage them to do that. I'm not going to be a force to stop it, but I would like to see what they have gained from it, really gained from it. And that is where I need to be more innovative with the way I test students. I suspect unless we change the way that we test students, unless we change the manner in which we evaluate students, we may end up running that risk. Students or anyone will try and find the least path of resistance. Right?
Sure.
Again, human nature, as competitive as we are, as adventurous as we are, we also wish to find the most efficient way of doing things as well.
This is evolution.
This is evolution in action.
Yeah.
Right? So if the most efficient way to do it does not require using a lot of brain power and gets a good result, then we might as well not use that brain power. And you're spot on. These tools will work to our detriment if we are not able to build our education systems in a manner that we give students the opportunity to put their best foot forward. So the buck has to stop with us. So might as well just raise the game and test these students so that we can prove ourselves that we
Are teachers.
are teachers.
You talked about competition of nation states, and let's be very straight about it. We are seeing the emergence of multipolar world once again.
Yeah.
And there is United Nation. So the smaller countries are aligning themselves with one, power or the other. But there is a power for good, and there is supposed to be a power for good, and it is United Nation. What is United Nation doing to, limit the damage that's been done with this latest technology?
If you will allow me, I will tap into the experience that I have had representing Pakistan at some of the negotiations at the UN that pertained to creating mechanisms to resolve international investment disputes. Right? So large international investment disputes were bringing the economies of developing countries down because they would lose these cases, the damages would be extraordinary, and they would not be able to pay for them. Right? And one of the examples is Reko Diq, again, an area where I was able to assist the Federation of Pakistan, and that, as you know, we managed to settle out of court. So the idea was to learn from the lessons of the developing countries and allow the UN to build from the experiences. Just like as I was speaking in terms of courts and how they test laws and then they try and improve and find weaknesses and then show areas that need further improvement. UN as a body is designed to take the entire globe along. The entire globe. And expecting the UN to build some uniformity for the entire globe, where the challenge is AI and the regulation of AI is structurally something that the UN is not designed for. The UN is not designed to create solutions in a matter of months that all countries will accept. Because otherwise, what is the point of creating some solution that are not binding when it comes to AI? There is room, and I am contributing again at the UN, helping them prepare guidelines that countries can use to adopt when they write international investment agreements.
Okay.
Now that use is different case scenario. We as experts, 15 experts selected from across the globe, are sitting together, and thanks to the UN, we are using our expertise to prepare guidelines that countries would want to use because they know that these guidelines have been prepared by experts and they have suffered in international investment agreements, so they have reasons to use our guidelines. We don't want to create a consensus. We have enough need out there to give these guidelines that countries will be happy to adapt. And that is where the guidelines are doing an extraordinary job. But where you want an agreement of all the countries that should be binding in nature, then you will need the input of the entire globe. And that entire globe is going to have a lot of to talk about and discuss and back and forth, and this will take years. So that is why what I will say is, let's not start by trying to reinvent the wheel. Let's start with the very basics that are in the Charter of Human Rights or the norms that any civilized nation has to follow in warfare. All of those frameworks have a presence and they exist. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're just going to say these are the basics that we have come to acknowledge as a human race and understand that these underlining aspects is something we do not compromise on as civilized nations across the globe. So why do we have to start building something from scratch? Let's find out what areas are problematic and say these areas, everyone can agree, are not going to be spaces that allow for us to develop a technology, because the road it takes us down is, although paved with gold, but takes us to hell.
So we want good people to adopt good practices, but the bad people will always, do the bad things. And sadly, this is the reality of the world as I see it. We don't want to end this conversation, but sadly we are short of time. And in the end, I would like you to advise young aspirants who are listening to our podcast. They want to do something big on the basis of this technology. What kind of legal complexities or the legal structure they should be aware of if they want to start a business or expand it globally?
The first thing I will tell young entrepreneurs is, if you want to start a business and you wish to expand it globally, make sure that you fail fast.
Okay.
Because whatever you are thinking in your room, planning out, none of that is really going to play out the way you envision it. You're going to have to put something out. The market is going to tear it down. You will have to be resilient. You will put something together. It will be better than what it was previously, and it will be much different from what you envisioned when you were planning it out in imagination. If you can fail fast, you can learn lessons quickly, and you can adapt yourselves with building solutions that are most optimal for the market. Using AI, remember, where I was sharing all the previous advice of protecting you from any of the legal consequences, the element of creativity is going to really stay. So whatever solutions that you are going to give out there, if the only thing that they are doing right now is to bring in more efficiency, those superior models as they are churning out are going to cater for that without having to use any other application in the intermediary. So for example, if I am providing solutions to conduct legal research, and I have a solution which provides legal research, very soon some of the models like Copilot and others, they will be able to churn out output that will be equally good to the one that I may be able to give today. So what creative element do I have which allows me to stay ahead of these large platforms when I give my results? So the element of creativity is going to differentiate how best you can capture the market.
Sure.
And that is where you will make your space. The second thing, from a legal point of view, is most startups don't realize that when they are conducting a business, they are doing so in the position of what is called a partnership,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And if there are 2 founders or 3 founders and they're building something,
Hmm.
any liability of their product will fall not just on whatever business entity that they have created, but the repercussions would go into their personal domain as well.
Okay.
So, for example, if there is 3 founders who
Mhm.
put together some solution, and that solution unfortunately crashes the entire system of a large commercial entity,
Hmm.
and they have raked in losses that go into billions
Hmm.
or millions at least,
Hmm.
because they used this app which was faulty, and now they're looking for damages,
Hmm.
and they come out seeking damages from the founders of this business entity. And if this business entity was operating as a partnership, which is any specific working arrangement that you have without having it registered as a company,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
right?
We are relying on the technology to develop our products or services, and there would be repercussions and there would be things that would go wrong. How to save ourselves?
Exactly. So I will advise founders, as soon as you're about to get into a commercial agreement with any entity, register yourself as a company. Because when you are operating as a company, the books of the company are bifurcated from your personal assets.
Sure.
God forbid something bad happens, and there are losses, and there are damages, and your company has to be held accountable for that. They will only be able to go after the assets in the company. They will not be able to go after your personal assets. So essentially, my car, if it's not company owned, is my car. The company owned motorcycle, yes, that can be sold off to settle the damages. There are positives and negatives to each solution. In a company, you will be taxed twice. Essentially, any earnings your company makes is going to be taxed. And then the salary you draw from the company is going to be taxed again. So you're essentially getting taxed twice, which would not be the case in a partnership. But a company allows you to fail fast.
That's a high point to end our conversation. On the taxation bit, there were some questions, but maybe next time.
Inshallah.
Thank you so very much for giving us your time and sharing your insights.
Saad, it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for the platform.
Thank you. I hope you liked the episode. There was so much to learn. Do share your feedback, comment your questions, and we'll get back to you with the answers. Thanks a lot. Allah Hafiz.